What's up guys, welcome to Saturday. Today we're going to take it a little bit more slow paced and do something different. Instead of making a prediction on what's going to happen today, because it's Saturday and chances are there's nothing that's going to be happening. Instead of doing a prediction, we're going to do a reflection instead. Now this is something that I've been consistently doing for a while now. Just at the end of every week I look through the plays that I called as well as the plays that I took and to reflect on it to see if there were anything that I can improve on. And so if you guys are interested in this type of video, then buckle in. But otherwise, this is going to be more of a chill, take you through a Saturday, take you through kind of a reflection session. And yeah, I'm going to dive right into it. So this week we ended up on a 5 out of 5 in terms of accuracy, in the sense that I made 5 correct calls. And again, this all started with the weekly chart where I was like, okay, there's that weekly fair gap. So I wouldn't be surprised if price were to retrace. Now, this also comes from every time when you take out a previous high, you always kind of go for a retrace, especially if it's a key high. For example, this is when the previous all-time high happened. You went through a 3-month retracement period pretty much. Once you formed the new all-time high, you also started going into consolidation / retracement. Now, when price actually took out this range high, for example, you went through a bit of a retracement. I'm not saying that it will always, have a retracement, but what's important to understand is that every time, like the markets move from periods of high volatility to low volatility, either that, or you can treat the markets as, okay, after every impulse move, you tend to retrace before the next impulse move. It's definitely the pattern that we've been seeing throughout the last couple of months, where price kind of ranges and it pumps, ranges, impulse move, ranges, impulse move. And right now you're definitely going through a retracement and not a range at the moment. None of this is surprising. And this is just a tip for you guys who are new into the markets. Just know that a lot of the gains in the markets tend to happen really quickly. Like all at once, almost. Like nothing can happen for the longest period of time and then all of a sudden, stuff moves. That's the nature of crypto. That's the nature of financial markets. So if you're holding on to something and you have a reason, you have a solid thesis for believing that token or whatever, there's a reason to improve, then, keep holding it. Because as long as the market is going to continue to go up, you go from these periods of retracement into periods of, pump, high volatility, right? From low to high volatility. Like basically this retracement so far is nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that is surprising. So let's move on to the daily chart. Daily chart wise, we've pretty much nailed, most of the moves this week outside of Monday, because Monday was a little bit less clear. These 4 candles here, perfect. We played it well. Essentially the playbook, when you see bearish candles form and you have a clear reason to believe that price is, going to head down, once you get a bearish close, 80% of the time, the next candle tends to want to also continue that move. And so every single day, we basically, okay, daily buys is down. Okay, boom, we look for a retracement, daily high, and then write the expansion down. Same thing here, market opens up here, but previous candle was bearish. So open up high, and then you start heading lower. Same thing here, candle closes bearish, opens up high, and then start heading lower. So pretty much play this to perfection. And now let's hop onto the 1 hourly chart. In fact, the 15-minute might be better for this. Throughout the entirety of this week, there were definitely moves that I could have seen coming more, but this would have been tough. Let me explain what I mean. So on Monday, the play that I called was that London broke out and you want to look for a retracement into this order block right here, and for ultimately price to take out the current daily high. It happened, but the most volatile move of the day would have actually been towards the downside. Now, you guys hear me talk about AMD a lot, where Asia is accumulation, London is manipulation, New York AM is distribution. But then what I don't talk about is X, right? There's X, which is New York afternoon session. Now, X can either mean a continuation of the move of New York morning or a reversal. 2 scenarios that are very possible, and it highly depends on what price action is showing at that very moment. There's also a reason why I don't tend to trade the New York PM session. Well, first of all, I'm living in Asia at the moment. It would be physically impossible for me to trade the New York PM session. So I usually, whatever calls that I make, it's always predicated on the New York AM session, meaning the entry should come during or slightly before the New York AM session, and then you take the profit usually during the New York AM or like before the end of the day, basically. So something I could have seen coming, but I think what matters is that on the very next day, we managed to play this well also. So next day, what ended up happening was you have your Asia accumulation, and then London actually broke out again. And in this case, I believe my analysis was predicated on the 1 hourly chart, because I was like, okay, this is Asia. So what I mentioned was that you wanted to see price return back to the Asia high, find support at it, and then go take out the previous daily high. This ended up also being correct, although right after you get a retracement candle. So to those of you who, took the trade, but then you maybe got stopped out because you didn't take your profit, just understand that the nature of my calls on YouTube mostly is on an intraday basis, which means I'm not really looking to capture, the majority of the move. I'm looking to capture a high probability move that lines up with my system on it, like basically repeating this every single day. If you can do this twice a week, you're making really, really good money. And so far, since February, because the win rate has been about 82%, I believe, we've been doing pretty well for ourselves out of 76. Ooh. Almost got burned there. Almost. Like a loose bit of ash actually fell. And by the way, I have to talk about the exceptional weather today. I think a lot of you if you're a Westerner, you're gonna look at this and be like, how is this good weather? It's cloudy, it's rainy. Also, I think the camera is kind of like chopping in and out here and there. So I do apologize for that if you guys have been seeing like a choppy camera. But right now in Vietnam, the summers get really hot. Like even coming from Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, it gets as hot as Kuala Lumpur. So for me, one of the favorite things that I love to do is to spend some time during the afternoon, smoke a cigar and do some work. Lately though, in the last 2-3 weeks, I have not been able to do that due to how hot the weather was. So the moment I saw that today was a cloudy day, I just got so happy. Maybe this is only an Asian thing where Asian people, especially people from Southeast Asia, from a hot country, you guys can relate to this, where cloudy days and rainy days are much more preferable over the sunny days. I know the Westerners are, like you white people are very different because like you guys want to spend all day at the beach and stuff like that. But honestly, me personally, I prefer a nice cloudy day, or heck, even a rainy day. As long as there isn't wind, which as you can see from the way the smoke is kind of floating around, there is not too much wind today. So absolutely pristine conditions for a cigar, and this is my kind of day. But anyways, getting back into the review. So next we move on to Tuesday, I believe. Is it Tuesday? No, it's Wednesday. So Wednesday, like this is the part where I want to touch on more, because definitely 100% there's something there that I could have presented better. And what I mean by this is that if you take a look on Tuesday's candle, it should have closed bearish. That's Tuesday's candle, it closed bearish. And I also mentioned that within the video that, hey, Tuesday bias closed bearish, but this is where I myself got confused as well. And just to show you that this happens to the best of us, instead of being fully like bearish, like just pointing bearish, I also mentioned that there is a possibility that price may break above this one right here, and that would be the bullish scenario. Something I should be doing differently next time is that depending on the daily bias, and for example, there is this 50 gap here that got filled during the Asia session and price started breaking lower after that. I should have seen this. I completely missed this, but next time around, when I see a situation like this, I'm going to be much more confident in telling you guys, hey, we still ultimately nailed the setup, right? Because price didn't break above here, so there was no reason to be bullish. Like, I should have been much more confident here in terms of the direction, because ended up, this was one of the best trading days of the week, and we nailed it. The only problem is, I also kind of talked about the other scenario a bit too much. That's something I should be more wary of, keeping in mind the daily bias, the higher time frame, letting the higher time frame dictate the direction in which my lower time frame is going to go. So this ultimately ended up being a decent day, but something I could have done better there. And then next we move into Wednesday. In terms of Wednesday, let's move on to the 15-minute chart again. So this one was a super clear setup, and this was another one of those days that I definitely could have played better, in the sense that I could have been much more confident in telling you guys like, hey, this is what's happening right now and you are going to dump. Now, the setup for the day was that I drew out this exact 50 gap right here. And I told you guys, if you get a candle close beneath this 50 gap, then you're going to head lower. Now on Twitter, I also posted, right after this candle close that, hey, even though the daily target that I set out, right, the bearish target has already been hit, you guys can still continue to trade this because the market looks like it's, still going down. And that ended up being correct. But what I should have done better is knowing that this right here is just a retracement move. The difference between, one of the easiest ways to spot the difference between a retracement and an impulse move is, first of all, your higher time frame bias. The higher time frame was clearly shooting towards the downside. You can see how explosive these down moves tend to be compared to this up move, where like this, you went from 109 to 107 within a period of 3 hours, but then it took almost an entire day, actually more than an entire day, to go from 107 to go back to 109, right? That lack in volatility and the choppiness of this move indicates that this is more of a retracement than a impulse move, which means the overall trend is still towards the downside. I'm seeing now that the camera is kind of like paused at the moment, potentially because someone's trying to call me. Right, okay, we're back. think someone was trying to call me, trying to make a reservation at a rooftop bar today, and I think they really want my business. So yeah, this slow, move, especially if it happens in 1, 2, 3, this is your Elliott wave theory, right? This was definitely a retracement into where I also mentioned specifically that this was a day where even though the 1 hourly was showing bullish order flow, right? This is change the state of delivery, and then boom, you break it again. Now, what I should have realized is that this was easily just manipulation above the highs, and then ultimately the move was there. I could have seen this coming better. I had a feeling, but then I think I was so caught up in the whole trying to maintain that 80% win rate that I played it a bit too safe. And moving forward, if I see it, and I need to trust myself more basically, because, or rather, I need to trust the higher time frame more, because the higher time frame is clearly pointing towards the downside. This was easily a retracement move, and so yeah, this was super simple. We did not need to wait for this to close, especially if you also look into the lower time frame charts. This was clearly a London manipulation towards the upside. News happened at 8:30. And this is when the move began, right? The 8:30 candle is the move that started everything. Yeah, telling you guys that to wait for that fair value gap to close below would have been a certain answer, in the sense that because the 1 hourly was bullish still, unless that fair value gap got closed below, then it would be 100% bearish. I don't necessarily think that is a wrong frame of advice. It wasn't necessarily a wrong call, but I definitely should have been more aggressive, been more confident with that call, because I could see that move coming. It's just for one reason or another, probably to the pressure to maintain that 80% win streak led me to playing it much more safe than I would have wanted to. Definitely could have said something along the lines, okay, if you get a change in state of delivery there, that will definitely be manipulation and price is going to head down from there. But overall, we still managed to call the downside move, because that is still resistance. Ultimately, this day could have been better, but we still ended up on a win. And then moving on, we have Friday. Now, yesterday we played it to absolute perfection, because this was a 1 hourly fair value gap that I drew out. Now, something different that I could have done is yesterday we were talking about multiple fair value gaps, right? This one and this one. I said I didn't know which one was going to get filled and which one's going to lead to the rejection. I don't think, actually, on second thought, this is valid. This is purely lining up with the system. It's very hard to predict which one's going to get hit. But yesterday I was much more confident in the sense that, okay, the direction today is 100% going to be towards the downside. I do not see any potential, I gave you an invalidation, right? An invalidation scenario, meaning if price were to go bullish, then this is what you look for. But chances are, I had to put my money, will be towards the downside. And this one was TP number 1, and that would have been easy. So yesterday, called it to perfection, basically bearish daily bias. If we take a look at the lower timeframes, you had Asia, price manipulated above the Asia highs, started breaking lower, retrace right before the New York AM session, and then when the news hit at, I believe, well, the move actually began at 9:30 during the futures open. Right after this happened, boom, you get a change in state of delivery, and boom, off you go to the downside. Placing a limit here would have also been a solid trade, although I remember yesterday, because I also took this trade, that I was kind of panicking, honestly, because of how many relatively equal highs were being formed here, and price showing a willingness to just chop around. And that was concerning, honestly, but I'm glad I stuck to my higher time frame analysis, stuck to my system. Ultimately, guys, lesson here is that you don't have to trust yourself. You don't have to trust in your skills, but what's important is that you trust your system. And this trust can only be built by extensive backtesting, extensive use of the system, seeing how it plays out. And most importantly, one of the big reasons why I started tracking my win rate publicly on these YouTube calls is to not only instill confidence in myself that, hey, this is a system that works, but also to instill confidence in you, the viewer, that this is a system that works and you can trust it. And ultimately, let the system play out, and boom, it was a really solid day. Now, speaking about the system, and if you would like to install a system that works within the next 60 days, me and you, right? This is not some stupid Signals Group course program where you're part of 500 other people and you're not going to get the attention you deserve. I'm going to be working with you one-on-one to install the system that you're seeing here on YouTube. And if you would like to work with me one-on-one basically to install this, we're starting the next intake of bootcamp in about 2 to 3 weeks. And if you would like in, then click the first link in the description box below. But otherwise, guys, hope you enjoyed this reflection. Let me know what you think of this format. And yeah, gonna enjoy the rest of my cigar. Probably make some new modules for bootcamp, talking specifically about these session stuff. But otherwise, have a great weekend, guys. And let's continue to kill it next week. Cheers.